Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. We are here for another Andor discussion. This is episode 7 now, racing through the series. It feels like only a week ago when it actually started. It's very unusual how quick this is actually going. The content is still very good on all the fronts, so ready for a big discussion on this one. How are we doing tonight, lads? How's it going?
Very well, very well. It was it's kind of these episodes. You're right, they creep up on you so quickly. It was like, oh, it's Wednesday, but I'm at work, so I can't wait until I get home. But I'm desperate to see it. I'm loving this show so far, and the way it's got me really hyped for it coming round as a weekly series again. It's so good.
Yeah, indeed. It's been another cracker. I've actually watched it twice there already, partly because the first time round, my mind was so blown I missed a lot of little details. So let's go back and rewatch it. We'll discuss the little ones as we go along. But yeah, absolute cracker. So looking forward to chatting this one. Yeah, as you said, episode 7 already. Where the hell has the time gone?
Brilliant. So just to reintroduce ourselves, my name's Tayte. I'm not usually the host of the Star Wars stuff on the channel. That is normally reserved by George, but we have a rare Georgeless episode this week. I'm joined, of course, with Dave and Phill, who have been on pretty much every episode so far, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to hear your thoughts on this episode, so please comment down below. We love to hear a discussion on all of this. So make sure to leave all of your thoughts below. What do you think of the episode? What do you think of the series so far? Anything to do with this as well. Please try and keep spoilers out of the comments, though, for people who haven't seen it yet and who are tuning in for this. This is a spoiler-filled discussion. But for those who are just randomly blipping in and joining in, don't spoil anything too much in the comments just to start off with. When we get into the episode, we get a little bit further through, then we can start to, actually go in with those big spoilers. And make sure to obviously like, share, subscribe the video, create a discussion around everything. Also, find us on our various different social medias where you can find out about all of the episodes and all the things coming up. We don't just do Star Wars stuff on this channel. We do everything. We've got loads of things going on. So follow us on Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy. Follow us on Facebook and Letterboxd. Just type in Cinema Savvy, you'll find us there. And go on to our Redbubble store where you can pick up random things like pillows, which have our branding on it, or anything like that. So please go and do all of those things over there. So we've got Deb Gaming coming in. I've seen it all, people. Miami cereal and pistachios are now canon in Star Wars. That's not a spoiler, right? No, it's not. It is not. We'll get into the juicy stuff in just a second. So I want to start off with last episode because it closed off another arc that we've had from our stories so far. Very interesting arc. We're starting to see Cassian, actually working for the rebellion, even if he doesn't believe in it. And we're left off with him kind of, separating himself from that cause and from that struggle and all the characters going in their separate directions, but with, of course, the fallout of the heist. How do we think about that going into the episode?
It kind of left us with a really final point. You could tell it was an arc, and this is where it was the heist was going to go down. We lost characters. You kind of cleared the slate of where we were with the amount of people that were needed. So we had all this cast sort of building, and now I've taken it back to just the few who we're going to concentrate on. So we don't need these ones anymore. So I think it was really nice to bring them in, get them out, get us shipped down to just those characters that we're going to follow through the next arc, probably, or the next 2 arcs. So yeah, it was. I thought especially the last episode, I thought was absolutely brilliant, a spectacle to be seen. So yeah, I was ready to move on in a new direction. And I say with this, I think we just mentioned before we came out, it's like a standalone episode before moving to the next arc, which is obviously starting the him in prison story that we saw for the trailers. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this one, especially and then get going forward.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. The last episode was a phenomenal end to that arc, and as you said, you've got rid of some characters. We now condensed back down again, focusing more on the important parts and going back to Coruscant. We've got political stuff to go on. We've got all sorts to talk about for this particular episode. But yeah, the last episode really rounded off that arc well. And the one of the nice things about the show so far is, although the first 2 arcs have been very definitive arcs, you still know what you're watching. You're not kind of completely lost going, well, this is now jarring. For the first 3 I've seen, it kind of all adds up. So it's been done really, really well.
We also have our overarching story that is kind of slowly going in the background of things that have been set up from the first episode, which I guess is kind of where we start with one of our characters who we will be following throughout the entire series, I'm guessing at this stage, which is Cyril, who doesn't really get much to do in this episode. And we put it at the start because he has kind of the opening note and the closing note of this entire episode. So we thought, do you know what? We're just going to, get this one out the way. He gets a job in an office. That's pretty much his entire arc. I don't know if we need to really expand upon that. He's decided to, downscale his work and his he wants to expunge his name from, I can't even remember what the quote is. It was expunge my name, wasn't it, that he quoted himself saying, to clear himself from, obviously, the mess that he got himself in the first 3 episodes. It's an interesting direction. I have my own thoughts on Cyril as a character. I still don't know where this is going. Many people have no idea where it's going. I was speaking to Dave before, and I was saying, is he going to end up on the good side? Is he going to end up as a big character to have a big moment later on, working for the Empire? What's going to go on here? And there's so many parallels between his character and Cassian seen throughout the series so far. Whereas Cassian seems to be kind of stumbling his way into success, and he seems to be kind of plummeting from the same effect. So it's very interesting seeing those two characters, and I'm sure that the next meeting between these two characters is going to be very feisty and very interesting to come. But what do we think of kind of his character this episode? It's a bit of a downgrade from his previous role. So
I think, he was up so high when we first kind of met him, where he was. I mean, he's still doing his own clothes, which I think is wonderful. First, it's his uniforms. Now it's just his general. I'm going to go get this job interview, so I've tailored this. His mother is obviously his mother is awful to him. Like literally every time we see her on screen, she's just belittling him all the time. I did love that it was built up like you're going to see your uncle, and we didn't know, is that going to be like a gangster thing? Is he in the? No, he just apparently runs a call center at the back somewhere in Coruscant. That's all he is. This huge office, and it's literally Cyril is now. He's trying to clear his name still, but he's now sunk to probably the lowest ebb he could ever be at. When it zooms out at the end, it's just in those bank of desks. You've all seen call centers that look. It's just banks of desks with nothing around them, no life, no joy. He's had everything taken away from him. I think that is a perfect snapshot of exactly how low he's gotten. That he's just stuck in this sedentary job. That he's now lost what he had, and he's now there. It yelled like this guy is either going to explode and do something, and he's going to go on a rampage, like Michael Douglas in Fallen Down, that sort of rampage, or he's going to discover something that inevitably might turn him towards the light side. But I don't. You're right. I don't know which way he's going to go, but he's at his lowest, and bless him, he doesn't get. He gets a couple of those, but I still love the actor did with the moments he had. He looks so depressed.
Can we just imagine the start of the next episode where it's "Hello, Empire Customer Service. How may I help you?"
Oh, Darth Vader lift music playing as they are on hold. It'd be amazing.
It'll be that Empire Day recruit for the Empire theme fucking playing that place. Sorry for English. Yeah, it's one of those things. Cyril, I've never really gelled with as we've gone on. I've said from the beginning, I hope he doesn't end up going to the side of the rebellion. It's a trope that I'm tired of in Star Wars, is characters who get disgruntled with something, they end up going to the rebellion or to the resistance or whatever it is. Don't get me wrong, I like reading and watching those stories, but it is overdone sometimes. I want to see a different and more unique take. And I do think Cyril and Cassian, I think, mirror each other in different, not just the same way as one rises, one falls. I actually think that as Cassian, wherever he ends up, we know where he ends up eventually by the time he gets to Rogue One. We obviously have no idea where Cyril is at this point. He might have moved up from a cubicle to an office. We don't know. But I do think, though, I think he'll try and get more and more back his old, as I said, he wants to expunge his record and clear his name. I think you'll see him want to get back into the Empire's good books, and whether that sees him then potentially going off to the ISB, I don't know. I think that's kind of where it's looking at. And as you say, his mother is god awful, and the favor from the uncle, we still don't know exactly who the uncle is, but it's looking like it's the mother thinks more highly of him than perhaps she should. It's a case of, I've done this for you. I've pulled in my own favor. I have spent my favor on you. So why aren't you showing me gratitude? What if you're sat there with your brown suit and your collar that's too high because I want attention? It's just, it's atrocious. Whilst you got the BBC News playing in the background, which I think is hilarious. So I'm really interested to see where he ends up. For now, it's kind of just, it's funny to watch someone who thought they had what they wanted, then lost it all, and is now having to realize that life isn't going to be exactly the way they want it, so they then have to trudge off and do the 9 to 5 because they kind of have to. That's all it is. It's a very, it's he's feeling humble and determined to get back, whereas Cassian is, by the time we see him in this episode, he's now got back from doing the one job he needs to do to get the nice pairing off and to get Marva out and kind of do his own. It's ends meet for both of them. It depends which one you want to look at here.
Exactly. We're going to look at Cassian last because we feel like there's going to be a punchy end to the episode that is exactly what we got there. We'll talk a little bit more about the ISB next, which it's been really interesting. I've not come on these discussions yet, so I have no idea whether it's been talked about or not. But every single time I see, and I've got to get his character name here right, I've got to get the actor's name right as well, because Ben Bailey Smith playing Lieutenant Supervisor Blevin, I don't see anyone but Doc Brown, and that's because I know him through comedy and nothing through any serious roles. And I don't know if that's kind of coming across for anyone else. I don't know if it's been pointed out yet. I just want to know if I'm completely, in the clear there, if anyone else is seeing nothing but a comedic character from him, even if he's playing quite a serious character, which is very difficult for comedians to, progress themselves into that. He's a fantastic actor, and I really enjoyed kind of, his argument that he had in this episode, which did get very feisty. A very interesting kind of debate put in front of the council about, kind of going above board and spying and espionage, but to help your own ends, but also to help the Empire's ends. So I want to just get everyone's takes on that entire argument, because Dedra Miro at the moment, she's a very conniving character, isn't she? She's really working the board and really working it. And I'm not sure whether she's doing it directly for her own ends or if she really believes in the Empire herself.
I think at the moment, I think it's very much her own ends. I think she's the only woman in that room, I believe, in that whole room. So
yeah,
I do think it's very much a power play. I don't think there's anyone else has come close. But she's, let's be honest, put it out there, she's absolutely spot on with what her investigation is finding. She's been right from the start that the rebels are getting Imperial equipment so they can start building the rebellion with different cells having all this Imperial stuff. So it is definitely a power play, but for the right reason. She's doing the right thing, and she even gets she gets noted for it as well. So, Pottergaz? The other guy really notices that it tells her to watch her back at the end. Like he's really impressed with what she's done. Like he even says maybe everybody in this room should be doing what you're doing. And it was really the scenes they had in the ISB today were some of my favorite. And we got the opening after the serial stuff. We got the voiceover talking behind the ISB, and you wondered who it was. And out comes Wolf Yularen for his triumphant live action return, the first time since A New Hope, where we've seen a guy playing him. So what an awesome little character just having there. You got the feeling more in this episode than we've had previously, where we're getting more into the surrounding Empire. We finally get troopers. We've got Yularen, so we've got Palpatine's name drops, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. So it is all building towards the greater Empire now. It's not just the people in this one room. So no, I thought all the ISB stuff I was really fascinated by, but I don't know if Deidre, what's her surname? Deidre
Miro.
I don't know if she's got another game behind there. Something tells me that she's playing both sides at the moment, and I kind of don't want her to be. I want her to be an outright Empire girl, but I don't know.
I mean, Yularen doing a voiceover, it's Clone Wars all over again. It's great. No, it is fantastic. The ISB has been my favorite part so far, because the ISB was Legends. It wasn't canon for a long time. And when they brought it back, they've now made it the scary place it needs to be. The ISB is the last place anyone wants to end up, which is why later on You hear them being talked about being tortured by the ISB. It's not a pleasant place. But Yularen coming in and setting the tone, going, we need to be harder on these people. All the prison sentences need to be reevaluated, which, as we know, comes back to bite Cassian in the ass for the end of the episode. We need to have crackdowns. We need to have everything reevaluated. The PORD thing, I can't remember the exact.
PORD is the silliest name for the operation. Public Order Resentencing Directive is what it was called.
That's the one, the PORG initiative. No, it was fantastic to see. And what I then liked from Mira was when she went, we are playing into the Rebels' hands here. She saw and recognized what Luthen then refers to later on, this mistake that they've made by going, cool, we're now going to clamp down. And as Leia says to Tarkin in A New Hope, the tighter you grip, the tighter you hold your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers. It's that level of oppression. And I really liked Mira versus Blevin in the meeting. I actually didn't know he was a comedian, so I didn't really see him. No, I didn't see him from that perspective. So actually, I think he's done a fantastic job. So if you're telling me he's a comedian, then I can actually even more applaud it, because it's very, very believable. He is very much the Empire in this kind of scenario. Same for any fascist dictatorship. Likes to hire sharks. It likes to get people who just have ambition. The problem is absolute power corrupts absolutely, and too much ambition will just cause everything to crumble. That's how the Empire fails in the end anyway. So it's a problem that will not go away. And it's great to see those start to grind out, those being played off against each other. And what I like is when Blevin plays his hand and loses and doesn't expect to lose. And Mira's then rewarded. He's like, you're right. And this is a good suggestion. More people don't play by the rules. Maybe shit will actually get done around here. So you can have this because it's a clear distraction for you. Basically, he went, look, she's not playing by the rules. It's not fair. And he went, you're right. You're not doing a good job. Here you go. And his face thereafter was a case of, wait, hang on a second. That's not what I intended. What's that? It's like a dog who's just had his toy taken away from him when he's just brought it back to you, gone, hang on a second. I have brought this back to you. Why have you now taken it from me? I thought you wanted this. This is not Are you not happy with this? It's just, it's madness. I really, really enjoyed that. It's a very well... we spoke about this fun enough before we came on air, being the fact it's a guest writer for this one episode. And it doesn't clash. In fact, it actually builds tension more within the ISB. And I felt the ISB has been one of the best written parts of the show so far. So for me, this was absolutely fantastic. I enjoy the political aspect of it, and we'll talk about that as we get down the line, because Mon Mothma in this episode has some really interesting bits to say. But this is fantastic.
Well, I think, seeing as you've brought up our guest writer, Stephen Schiff, we may as well go a little bit into him. Because his previous work has been done stuff with like shows that are like The Americans. So spy and espionage thrillers that are kind of aimed to make you kind of uneasy with the tension that's being built up over a long period of time. Obviously, as a writer who's coming in mid-series, you're given points. This is where the episode starts. This is where the episode must end. Between there, we have to have this kind of long stretch of events that must happen, but you need to make it seem like the tension is slowly building. And for a show like The Americans, where it is a tightening grip around this family, they're slowly being found out, and there's always that tension behind that. This episode is all about not only oppression, but also about the different ways that people can become radicalized. We see it in various different ways. You could take it as Cassian being radicalized later on in the episode from being imprisoned or incarcerated for a crime that he didn't commit. It could be Mothma being radicalized from seeing the oppression around her and wanting to make a change. It could even be something as simple as Cyril's character being in a kind of meaningless job. Something as simple as that can radicalize a person to go in one direction or the other. It can motivate you to kind of work towards that change, or make you kind of want to work harder to keep it as it is, or even tighter. And the scenes in the ISB from this episode are so fantastically written and woven in from the rest of the series. Like you said, you wouldn't realize that there was a guest writer here. But what Stephen Schiff is able to do is he's able to bring us back down and make the entire episode feel like everyone's being squeezed in from all sides, and having that dialogue being passed through all of the different characters, having that tension slowly build throughout the episode. It's really well done and really well woven, especially in these scenes where we have infighting within the Empire itself, kind of like people trying to climb on top of the pile and scrambling for it, and you can see that tension building. It's just brilliantly written across the entire board, and I think he's done a very good job here. I would like to see more of him if they bring him back for the second series.
I think tension is the absolutely perfect word. I think we used it a lot last week as well, where the whole series has been kind of, it's like Gilroy set this out and said, look, we've got, like you just said, like we've got these peaks and troughs, and right now we're just building and building so slowly to sort of, we hit the midpoint and we're about to go in different arcs, so they really are ramping it up. I think you're right, there's tension even between Cassian and his mother and what's going on with their relationship.
She has her radicalization as well. She has her moment of radicalization. We'll talk about that in a bit as well.
It just, yeah, it obviously goes into his father figure that he had and the awful scenes in the square they had with that. There's just so much building of this world, and none of it's comfortable. Not one place that you go to that you, maybe Cassian's beach resort at the end, is maybe for a few minutes. Kind of like, oh, this is quite nice. It's not Scarif nice, but, you know, it's quite nice. But other than that, nowhere that you go in any of these scenes is somewhere you feel relaxed. The ISB is very, it's really weird, but the colors on those white uniforms they wear look so, like, just knowing some just sort of looks like it's cutting off the circulation. It's that tight around the neck. And it's just little things like that that just are building everywhere you go. There is nothing that you can be relaxed with this series. And I think it's coming into right on this show must have been quite a big ask, especially when they've come off this big episode. You must have known coming in, like, we've got this massive episode where they're going to have this heist, and yours is kind of the follow-up episode, and to bring this up, and to be honest, it's right up there with the best in the series as far as I'm concerned. I would brought up the end, we'll bring it up now. I thought it was a pretty perfect episode. I've only seen it once. I can't wait to watch it again. So yeah, but the tension is just everywhere in every scene with every character.
Yeah, as Dave was saying, we spoke about tension a lot last week, and if the arcs have been so well conceptualized so far that you have these peaks and troughs, as you say, but not only that, the arcs themselves, the episodes have their own, but the overall arching arc has its own tension building on top of that. So it's not just the episodes and the story arcs themselves. You can break down and go, these are your points of tension here, these are your points of interest, here is your crisis, here is your absolution, here is the resolve, here is all the other bits and pieces, all the elements that make up a good story. But on top of that, you then have the entire tension, which, as I said earlier, in I think either last week before, talking about the problem with Cassian, is the fact that he has plot armor. You know he lives. There is no ifs or buts. We know because of Rogue One. So when you then have a prequel, you know the character can't die. So how do you then introduce new tension? Well, you introduce new characters that you don't know if they're going to live or die, and you have to introduce them in such a way that people can't question and go, well, surely they die because they are not in this, or well, hang on a second, this person should have been here. It's like Hera and the Ghosts have been placed in Rogue One and placed in The Rise of Skywalker to kind of drip feed them being around, so that when we go to look at Ahsoka, it's not going to be a surprise. And for those who haven't watched Rebels, you're going to be introduced to a character, but you would have heard the name before, whereas people who've watched Rebels and read A New Dawn will know the characters very well. So with this, where you have people like Vel and you have Luthen and Mon Mothma, at least Mon Mothma, again, we know makes it, but we don't know how. And that's a nice part of the tension as well. So you have to create tension where none exists. And it's done so well from start to finish. And we're only on episode 7. We've had 2 3-episode arcs plus this one. And we are talking about specifically the guest writing in this particular part of the show. And he has been able to do an incredible job continuing on the story without it being a complete anomaly where you go, hey, this just doesn't fit in, but at the same time putting his own flavor, put his own parts into it. So yeah, fantastic job, and I completely agree. I hope he's back for series 2, and if not, give him more like this in the future. Maybe not Empire, maybe go down the First Order route or with the High Republic, because something back then there's so many areas he could go into, but I would be quite interested to see how you do, because based on this one episode, big fan.
Exactly. And this episode was meant to be like the gap episode. We've gone from a 3-episode arc. We're going into another 3-episode arc next time round.
How nice is it, by the way? Sorry to jump in. To have a filler episode that isn't filler.
Exactly.
That's the genius. This was an episode that bridges a gap without it feeling like it was a waste. In the case of, you can miss this one.
Exactly. And it was good. And every single element of the story, I mean, sure, we went off with Cyril at the start because he didn't really have much going on there. But every single episode past that is quite intriguing and quite good. So let's go into Mon Mothma, and let's also go into Luthen. We've kind of grouped this section together because Luthen has pretty much one scene where he basically kind of says, "Oh, yeah, that was me. All that stuff, the heist, all of that. Yeah, I did all that, It's an interesting character because you're starting to see that he doesn't really, he's getting a bit careless with kind of his words being used, and he's starting to care a bit less about how other people feel about his actions and how he goes about things. And as a fantastic actor as he is, like, you can see that character becoming more and more tired of having to hold back and having to play by the rules, because the other team aren't playing by the rules. They're creating their own rules. And you can see that he's, slowly starting to get a bit more reckless with his kind of, not with his sentences, but with kind of how he's presenting himself and everything like that. He's fully aware that Mon Mothma's got, bodyguards who aren't on kind of her side. She doesn't trust her own husband. There's a lot going on there. So, for Luthen to be like, yeah, whatever, that was me, what are you going to do about it, kind of thing. You're going to have to just go with what I've done now. You put your faith in me. Now you've got to pull through with that. It's a very interesting dynamic that's being built up.
I love Skarsgård in this. For me, has been an absolute revelation. I've seen him in little bits and pieces before, but mostly through Avengers and things like that. So not taxing roles on him by any means. And I think he is stepped up to the plate in this, and he's absolutely incredible. But I know what you mean by saying that he's now the machine has started. The heist went through like he wanted it to. They've got these credits that are now with them, or 80 million credits that they took. They've got those. So the wheels are turning, and he is getting a little, not lax, because he did wait until the doors were shut, and he was always making sure he was smiling and gesticulating as if he was trying to make the big sale to whatever antiquity she was trying to return and get a new one for. But yeah, he was very much at first like, might not be me. It might not be me. Absolutely me. It was I think when the line said was you knew turning back would be impossible. When she says this isn't what you said it would be, he said, that's not what I said. It's amazing how this character is now the lead start of it was always thought that I thought Mon Mothma would play the bigger role in the start of the rebellion, but she's kind of helping, but on the outside, she hasn't been able to, she says when we'll get into it in a second, that she was trying to get funds from her family, but she stopped being able to do that, so she lost some of that sort of leeway on it. So Luthen, I thought, was just incredible. Yeah, I can see what you mean by he wants to now break free. I think he's almost starting to look at his escape route out of Coruscant when he needs to go, so he can drop everything. Not everything, because that shop's full of stuff like a Jedi. There was a Jedi Temple Guard helmet in the background today, which is a lovely little spot. But yeah, so I thought the scene he had was exquisite. I really loved it.
Yeah, he's Stellan Skarsgård's done a fantastic job in this series so far. And the moment in the shop was fantastic, where you have his assistant kind of listening in the background as well, because she's doing all this. You know this properly later on, but the interaction where he's like, you knew exactly what I meant. You knew this is where it was going. Those weren't what my exact words were. There would be no return after this. So you knew this is where it was going. You just kind of denied it from yourself. And you can see how he's the middle ground between Mon Mothma and where we get to is Saw Gerrera, who, as we then know from Rogue One, is that he was a radicalist extremist who's, been pushed to the fringes. We kind of don't want to associate ourselves with him, but now we have to. It's kind of it's very interesting. I need to go back and rewatch Rogue One because I think one of the leaders from the council happens to be in the ISB. From what a similar looking person. I've got to check to see if it is the same. And if it is, it wouldn't be surprising that you have spies everywhere. But Mon Mothma is very much the idealist political radical, where it's I will do what I must. I want to achieve my goals, but I want to do it without bloodshed and without basically rocking the ship too much. I accept there are risks, but I don't think she's allowing herself to fully accept and understand what those risks are, or try not to say them out loud to herself because she doesn't want to believe that this is the course that she's going to have to go down. Especially when she turns around to Luthen and goes, "People will suffer," and he goes, "That's the plan." It's like they are been choking us so long, so slowly that we've stopped noticing. Them being radical and cracking down is what we want because then it will encourage people to fight back. So not only do they get us the credits, but I've also pushed the Empire to be harsher and people will die. But it's for the greater good. And that's then the trap of rebellion and radicalization is what is the greater good and who has to suffer for that to be the case? Whose good is greater at the end of the day? Whose truth is best? It's a very common human foible, and it's one that you cannot escape from. The first time you ever make a friend, you're screwed for the rest of your life because people have their own different views and people have their own different ways of looking at life. Just because you and your best friend, for example, have absolutely everything in common does not mean you agree on every single step. So when you have political idealism mixed with radicalization, freedom fighting or terrorism, however you're looking at it, that's then from the common tropes from reality going into fantasy when it comes into the Empire versus the rebellion here, is that radicalization doesn't mean that you're going to be going through this with rose-tinted goggles going, everything's going to be perfect, the Empire will just crumble, all we have to do is just talk our way out of it. That's not how this works. Luthen is the more realist, whereas Saw Gerrera, we know, is the more extremist. It's kind of finding out where your allegiances lie. And Mon Mothma, by the time you get to Rogue One, when they go after Scarif, you can see the load is lifted off her mind of, well, in for a penny, in for a pound, they've gone and done it. I have not authorized this, but because they've gone and done it, I can wash my hands of it in a sense while still being believing in the cause. So Genevieve O'Reilly, I've said this from the beginning, is Mon Mothma. She's done a fantastic job throughout, and she has her own version of the same conversation with Luthen that she then has with her friend at her party later, and it is a fantastic interaction. And by the time she leaves, you can see Luthen and his assistant's going to hope she's worth it. It's like, doesn't really matter. Job started now. And before that, you had him listening on the radio, so his network's up, and that's the whole point. He says to her, "Look, you told me you wanted this done. I have now done this. Don't complain about how it's done."
Exactly. And it, like you said, it's just the different ideas that have been spread out about, first of all, from the ISB's perspective, how we deal with these people like who are rebelling against us. Do we kind of slowly kind of like look at their network? Do we just crush the people and hope that they bend the knee? And then from the opposite side of things, it's let's play the slow game, or no, kind of guns akimbo, just kind of run through, just shooting up the place and stuff like that, causing chaos and seeing where the chaos lands us. So it's a really interesting kind of dynamic that we've seen throughout all the episodes so far, especially in this episode where it really does kind of, those ideals come to a head. And Mothma still plays her game. She still goes off and has kind of meetings with rich, wealthy benefactors, childhood friends who could possibly fund that side of things. And she knows that his ideology matches up with hers in that sense. And they have that very kind of like secret code conversation, which is very not secret code. It's pretty much out in the open from the start. But it's that kind of mixing of different ideas. And I know that people have said in the past, "Oh, we hate it when Star Wars gets kind of political with their things and, trade union disputes and stuff like that." But the political intrigue that's been brought forward by this series, we haven't really seen on a grand scale in Star Wars before. And I think it's fantastic. It gives you that extra information. It gives you those little kind of bites of information, those little kind of things that will expand out into being larger later on, as we've seen in the films. So to have an episode, like we said, a filler episode that doesn't actually have any filler. It's all information that is useful and credible. To have moments like this where Mothma is going off and kind of trying to get those, those bids coming in and trying to fund it in the silence, whereas, Luthen just wants to, do heists and set up his network and really kind of like stick it to the Empire in that sense. And later on, we'll get Saw Gerrera and his kind of tactics going in there as well. It's fascinating. And I'm glad that Star Wars is looking at that side of things.
I think I've always been at the point when politics first started really appearing in, like, you see the prequels, it's like, oh, it's politics and stuff. And I think I certainly was in that group that didn't appreciate it at the time when I watched them, being a younger man than I was, obviously. But now, it's as I've matured, it speaks to me when they're having this through there. The Mon Mothma party scene was incredible. Our friend Tayte, I'm having to learn names all the time. Every week you have to learn new Star Wars names. So I love the fact that he's from the same planet she is, that she's been trying to think if she could speak to him in a way she could make sure that he wasn't with the ISB or the Empire, because she says in that point that she knows her driver is an undercover ISB officer. She tells him outright that her husband cannot be trusted. I wouldn't trust her daughter as far as I could throw her. To be honest, it could be quite far, but I still wouldn't trust her either. She's one of those, I think. She's siding with her dad and everything, so I don't think she'd be a help in this. So, yeah, I really love the whole scene. Mon Mothma is being so good in this. The characterization of this woman who's under not just political fire, but from the family as well, are putting these same pressures on her, and she's like she says to Tay that she is just trying to make herself a little bit of a nuisance in the Senate, just a little bit. So she's like poo-pooed against and sort of like, oh, it's just my Mothma again. Like she says, like, so they don't really spot what's actually over here behind this curtain. So yeah, excellent stuff.
Yeah, the whole part of whilst I hold a knife to your throat, you're not watching what I'm doing with my hands is kind of is fantastically well done. It's not just this episode; it's been throughout. I said it before, I said it again. I recommend Bloodline for those of you who haven't read it. It's a Star Wars political thriller that deals with the revelation that Vader's Leia's father. It's a fantastic book, and it gives you the origins of both the First Order and the Resistance. It's genuinely fantastic. I know I absolutely adore the side of it, and I was even younger than Dave was back then when the prequels first came out. Yeah, this is true. This is true. Although George, being the maybe that he is, didn't appreciate the fact there weren't more than 3 Star Wars films when that was the case. But Dave and I do remember at least there only being 3 for the majority of it. No, for me, by the time you get to so as you get older, you do mature more. You do take more of an interest in the world around you. The politics do become more interesting, especially someone who's a history buff as well. I like to see failures and successes and policies and interests throughout human history. To see it play out in Star Wars has always been very interesting. To see what goes on behind closed doors is always kind of a fascinating take on it. So I haven't really got much more to add on this point, apart from the fact that Tay Coleman especially talk about Shangri-La and her home and where she's come from. The fact he's like, well, you may not find my political views so appeasing. She's like, oh, try me. You think you're radical? Wait till you see what I've been doing. And yet she herself is going, hang on a second, I'm chastising my own friends who are even more radical than I am. So you think I'm bad? Wait until you meet my friends. And it's the whole, I guess that's for charitable organisation. I want you to be the chairman. It's a better factor for Shangri-La. It's just a front, and it's, yeah, I agree. You can't. It's like she goes, yeah, my driver's an ISB agent. You can't trust my husband. And agreed, you can't really trust the daughter. Although I think the daughter though is a little bit more naive. Her father is definitely kind of, she's daddy's little girl. You can see that, but it's more he plays her against her mother, where it's like, you're not here, you're always working, you're always doing these functions. Even this party, when there's supposed to be a dinner, it can really pan out. So he's trying to throw as many spanners in the works as we can, and we don't know to what end yet. I say yet because I think it'll be properly revealed as we go on. And I'm loving the interactions so far.
Indeed, indeed. So we haven't actually finished talking about Luthen just yet, as his assistant goes and meets Vel. for a very interesting scene where pretty much it's background to, well, he could reveal our entire operations. We can't really trust him, so you got to go kill Cassian, which I think it's gonna be a very interesting kind of interaction when they come back together, because Cassian, obviously in the last episode, kind of left Vel with her life and kind of said, I just want to take my cut. You can take the money for your resistance. I don't really care about the bulk of it. I'm in it for, myself, and this is what I worked for. Kind of take the rest and do whatever you want with it. So she's going to feel very conflicted there, because he has helped out the rebellion, but at the same time, he's a massive threat towards, the entire establishment and the entire order. It's almost kind of, it brings it back around to Luthen not really trusting him, well, saying that he trusts him in the first place and gets him on for this job, only to go, well, afterwards, bit him off, because he was really just kind of a pawn in his game. I don't think he realizes that the pawn's getting close to the end of the board and could, eventually get upgraded. But it's a very interesting scene. It's a very short scene. We do get the little hints towards, a possible Saw Gerrera sighting. We don't have a Saw Gerrera, what's it called, watch thing. We only have the Krennic watch. But outside of that, we do get kind of the hints that there might be, a connection in there, stuff like that. So,
yeah, I mean, I love the scene. I didn't realize the woman in red is that Luthen's partner in the shop? Was I thought it was a new character. Oh, okay. I literally did not spot that at all. That it was her. Just I guess the way she was dressed and looked, I thought, oh, new character, which it isn't. Okay, makes a bit more sense. But I thought it was someone from Saw Gerrera's background. The little symbol that was drawn on the floor that she went to follow. I couldn't really tell what it was, but I thought that might be something to do with Saw Gerrera. And when she just mentioned he does this and that, I think, oh, she mentioned it. Does she mean Saw Gerrera? But that's Luthen's part. Then I'm guessing it's Luthen. Maybe she was talking about. I like that she said you can't leave Cassian out there with Luthen in his head, so like you can't speak about Luthen. So we need to eliminate this line of the tree. We need that broken off. That branch cannot be out there just in case we're too close to something. So I really liked it. It was such a good scene. Vel, like from the woman you saw in the last episode to glammed up Coruscant Vel is a very different. Like it took me a second. Like oh, it's Vel.
She's
she had this
was it wardrobe whiplash between episodes?
Very much, but she had
I
this
didn't
very,
speak until she started speaking. Like it's oh, it's you. Yes, it's you. Hang on a second, I did not recognize you.
Yeah, she had that almost like.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say next you'll be like
50s bombshell sort of looked like the hair, the blonde hair just on the shoulders, and it was an amazing look for her. I thought she looked phenomenal, but it was such a stark contrast from where we had seen her for the last few episodes. But yeah, it was a really nice scene played out, just like give us enough information to kind of build us up to what they're going to try and do. But obviously now Cassian, especially with him being, by the end of it, we'll get to it, he's incarcerated. So does that make it harder or an easier target for it to get to? Interesting.
Indeed. No, I love that. No, she's very much Night Sister-esque get up in terms of the red coat with the hood and everything. So I can see what you mean. It took me a little while as well to realize until she got to the actual meeting. And this is nicer. This is seeing Coruscant as it should be, which is not the fully high-flying city that we all know and love. We know there's an underground to it, and this is kind of that foot scratching the very, very, very top soil layer of that underground. We know there's a lot more layers to go. But yeah, that interaction, especially like I thought he'd be here, was obviously referencing Luthen. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic when she's talking about, we've got this loose end, you're going to have to find him. It's like, when you say find him, you mean kill him, don't you? Like, well, that's up to your own interpretation, but yeah, pretty much go find him, kill him, because we don't need him hanging around. It's like, it's when you realize she's almost more radical than Luthen. It's like, hang on a second, who's really playing who here? It's a fantastic little interaction, a fantastic little dive that and ties up the last few episodes as well. It ties up that last arc, so it continues. Again, that's what I'm saying. The filler episode, without being filler, it actually does the definition of the job of filling in the gap rather than actually just being there for their sakes. So, like, we've got a 2-episode arc, a 3-episode arc, and a finale, kind of 2-part finale, whatever it is. You know, we've got a set amount here. We've got a spare episode. What can we fill it with? It's like, no, we have story points. Let's use this effectively. So yeah, going from that arc when she's asks about Cinta as well. She knows she cares. Like, where is she? Have you heard from her? It's like she's doing her job. She is doing her job like you should have done, basically, kind of chastising her. So talking about Nemec and Skier and everything else, going, well, look, they're pawns, they're dead, but does that really matter? Don't really care. One of them's like, well, he had his doubts anyway. He's gone. It's been taken care of. So win-win. And it's the brutality. This is where you have the extremists versus the radicals. It's that kind of, where do you draw the line between revolution? As she said, this is what revolution looks like. No, this is what extremism versus rebellion looks like. It's kind of the very much gray area.
I like how, we've been discussing it quite a lot from this episode, trying not to call it a filler episode. Let's call it an epilogue from the previous series and a prologue to the next series, because we definitely get a lot of stuff kind of from Cassian and his standpoint in this episode. Of course, it's kind of his series. We do follow other people, but it will centralize around where he ends up when we get to Rogue One. This episode is fascinating from Cassian's standpoint. He ends up going back to Ferrix, and I didn't think that he would ever return there throughout the series. That's something that I just did not think would happen. I thought that was kind of like, nope, you've left that world behind. You're going to be on the run kind of for a while now kind of thing. But he kind of chances it and kind of heads back to where it has been his home for, a lot of his life. He meets back up with Marva and he tries to convince her to run away with him and stuff like that. And it's unsuccessful. She's happy staying where she is because that's how she rebels. That's how she kind of gets her win with the Empire. And I remember kind of one of the best kind of lines from this entire scene is when she says, I remember hearing about, what happened in Adani, and then going like, I put on my best coat, I walked out into the street and I smiled. It's fantastic. It's brilliant. It's kind of the most petty thing you could hear from this entire storyline. And she went out, and that's how she gets kind of, that's how she is able to be a part of the rebellion. And she wants to stay there. He isn't able to convince her, so he then has to disappear off.
You're right. I was with you on that. I didn't think thought Ferrix would be out of it for the rest of the story now. I didn't see us going back. I didn't see any other reason to go back. He seemed to have said goodbye to his mother last time they were there. So I was like, okay, that's not somewhere we'll go back to, but I'm so glad we did, because the scenes between Cassian and, sorry, what was her? I can't remember her character name. I know it's Fiona Shaw who plays her.
Marva.
Marva, sorry, yes, like mother. I should remember that. I should have just said the mother and slurred it a bit. I would have got there. Mother, yeah, it's her. So I thought the scenes between them were incredible. Some of the acting over this show is well beyond what I would expect from characters in a Star Wars movie, and that's not a slight anybody, but sometimes you get that pulpy kind of fun kind of acting to it. Even in some of the trilogy movies, you get that acting. You're like, all right, that's fine. And this is like top acting. Like, if there's no Emmys for this series for some of these actors when it comes around, I'd be upset, to be honest. I think some of the acting, this has been some of the best I've seen on television for quite some time.
The issue is, in the Emmys, it would be up against, House of the Dragon, which is going to be sweeping the board with it, and also maybe
the Lord of the Rings one, Rings of Power, and there'll be another season of Succession by then. And
no chance. They got no chance. I mean, it's fantastic acting, but as soon as you throw Succession into the mix
for TV at the moment, we're in a very, very good place for it. But yes, unfortunately, I agree. You won't see many rewards.
I'm pretty sure there's another series of Ted Lasso coming out, so that'll win everything as well.
Yeah, no awards for this at all. I'll make some. It'll be fine. I'll send them to them. But yeah, so I just think it's such a good part. I love that we then also got just a really quick flashback to Cassian's dad getting killed, to Clem, to how he was taken, that he was trying to break up a little bit of trouble in a protest to the troopers arriving. They were just there to raise the Empire flag in the town, and someone else threw a rock, and he was there when he turned round, and then to see him hung in this. I mean, you saw a quarter of an arm, but you knew you could hear the rope.
The glove.
Yeah, it's just awful. You could just hear the sound of him that he was hung. It was just awful. Like, it was great to see those late clone troopers some early stormtroopers. Maybe some of them might be the first recruits. I don't know if we're quite there in that timeline, but great to see. It was amazing to see that Phase 3 armor actually on real actors. It was amazing. So I thought all the stuff, Bix was kind of, I don't think it was very really necessary for him to go see Bix. I thought he was going to go to try and take her with him, but it was more just that was probably the only scene I got a bit like, I didn't really need that when he went to see Bix to say, oh, Tim did all this, Tim's fault. Tim, and that was about it. So that was the only downside, probably the whole episode. But the rest of it, the mother thing, seeing the clone troopers, seeing the story of his dad that was all worked for me. Ticked all the boxes for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's me and Clone Troopers. Like, the Phase 2 helmet especially is one of my favorites. You know I was going to be all over this. I've been waiting for this moment to see what the hell they were doing. I don't know. I was working out timeline-wise. I don't know if there were early Stormtroopers in there. I think it's the end of that, was the start of that crossover period where we get in the end of Bad Batch, where you see the first crossover between Clone Trooper and Stormtrooper. You get the Stormtrooper prototype helmets and things. You kind of see that design progress. But that aside, yeah, to actually have a hanging in Star Wars, it is a bit on the nose, and it, especially being a minority as well, you kind of have that, especially along with Cassian as well. It's not it's brutal. And it should be, and it's dark for Star Wars, and it should be. And I applaud them for going down this route of going, this is what extremism and fascism looks like, and we're not going to shy away from it. And I applaud them for doing that. No, I thought Ferrex was. So this is the filler part of this episode, where it's the going up and tying up loose ends. It's going home, checking up on Marva, paying off his debt, seeing Bix, and going right, and then find out basically that Tim sold him out. I was like, well, I kind of figured that would be the case. He's very kind of like, I told you so. I told you he's a bad apple. Yeah. So it's very. This was the filler part of it, but I thought Marva especially was very interesting, along with B2 Emo as well, where he's just like, I'm ready to go, but we haven't packed, and she said we can't go. And then he's like, what do you mean you can't go?
I love that droid. Just... That might be one of my favorite droids across the East. Just Cassian.
Yep. And you can see how he gets on with K2 later on. He's had B2. It's just like, basically like, Daddy, I want my cuddles. Hello, I love you. To Cassian, which is to K2, which is just like, I hate you and I hate my own existence, but I'm here and I might as well get on with my job, but I'm going to tell you how much I hate you. It's
that interaction, if it happens, I'm just saying.
Well, we won't get how he meets him, but I guarantee you'll probably see him towards the end of next season. It'd be fantastic. Hopefully, obviously, they'll bring back Alan Tudyk to come back to the role and things. It would be incredible. But no, I liked the fact this is what we mean by filler list sometimes. They go tie up the loose ends. And Marva talking about the rebellion, and I thought he was going to tell her that Aldani was me. I was expecting that, that was me. I did that, but I think he was trying to protect her a little bit and protect himself for the case of, I can see what you want. I'm not going to be that person you want me to be, so I'm kind of going to leave you to it and go off to Bournemouth, go off to Namos, which then we then get into the end of all this. I keep saying the problem is though, I lived down in Salisbury for a while. I've been down to Bournemouth a lot. One of my best friends lives down there, and when I went down there last year, they were just wrapping up shooting down there, so I know what parts they were shooting at. I could easily recognize it. Not that that's a bad thing, and not that this is the one thing we'll talk about this Tate last week. Actually, I want to ask you about this because we were talking about the lovely comparison between this and Kenobi and The Mandalorian, where you've had the volume, whereas this is a lot more live action sets and it's a lot of more more reality. And don't get me wrong, the volume is incredible and the technology has only just begun, but you can see where this is going, especially when you first saw the gallery for Mando and then, hang on a second, that isn't a set, that isn't a live action. How the hell do they get away with it? It blew your mind. We know they're building a big one of Pinewood and things, but this was wonderful. And to go back and then, he ends up in Namos. He ends up being this kind of. He talks to Martha about going somewhere warm, getting away from all. He's got his new name, and you can see actually when he leaves Bix and Martha that he has done what he wants to do. In Bix, he's made sure she's okay. Disappointed that he's not going to get to go with her and all the rest of it, but he leaves her to it. And Marv, he goes, I can see I'm not going to have to change your mind. You, as you say, you're old, you're fed up, but you want to fight. That's fine. He pays his debts, he says his goodbyes, and wraps up. And this is what good filler is. But yes, I'm interested in your opinion on volume versus live action sets, because also for flashbacks, we're talking about the Clone Troopers, Book of Boba Fett. This is how you do that. You don't have a dream for half an episode. You just have flashbacks when it needs, or you tell a story. You don't have half and half. And it was just, yeah, pay attention. This is how you do it.
So my kind of opinion on that is that as good as the volume is, nothing beats practical sets in any sense of the word across anything at all. And sure, there are things that you can't do all practical. There are certain things for certain scenes where you will need the volume to be able to get that. Something that looks a bit more alien, something that looks a bit more kind of space age. But at the same time, I'm really enjoying the practical sets on this show. I really am. And it always makes you feel a bit more immersed. And I love the job they did with The Mandalorian. I love the job that they did with Book of Boba Fett and also with Kenobi. But this feels more real. I don't know if it's because the subject matter is a little bit closer in line, less away from fantasy and more towards actual kind of brutal totalitarianism and stuff like that. But it just feels like it hits harder, purely out of, those practical sets and, just being able to place yourself in there, which is why I'm really enjoying the series. You say that, and then we get into this the scene in, is it Namos? Naimos? I don't know.
Namos, yeah.
Namos. I didn't like these scenes. And the reason why I didn't like these scenes was because of the music, first of all. It was so out of place and immediately drew me away from the episode. And it's kind of, they went a bit weird with it. And I know they wanted to try and get tropical vibes in Star Wars, but they've had tropical locations in Star Wars and they haven't needed to, go in with that kind of music. I've always seen Star Wars as the big kind of bombastic brass orchestra all the way throughout, and the lovely kind of string sections and everything that goes into that. The second you throw in something mechanical, the second you throw in something that is away from that, suddenly the show doesn't become timeless. The series and Star Wars doesn't become timeless. And I had that problem with Mandalorian Series 1 towards the end of the series, with the I can't remember what the name of the droids were, but the Death droids, or the kind of black troopers, towards the end with the kind of
the Dark Troopers,
the Dark Troopers with like the mechanical dubstep styled thing. That immediately drew me away from that. And it's exactly the same here. Star Wars for me has always been this kind of timeless classical thing where you stick that kind of music onto it and it immediately puts you in that universe because that's what's been set from the start. The second I hear weird Club Tropicana, but also Star Wars in a Star Wars show, it removes me from the situation. I was so like, this episode's building. What? Really? What? Weird. As far as the scene itself, he goes to the shops. He gets kind of caught up in, people running away. They never actually say why they're running away. He gets kind of caught by one of the guards, and then suddenly he's very briefly interrogated. He says he's done nothing wrong, and then suddenly, everything goes wrong. It is police profiling put into Star Wars, and it's an incredibly relevant topic. It still happens, today all over the world, and that's kind of how he's picked out. Like we were saying earlier, various different reasons for radicalization. This is absolutely one of them.
I know what you mean by the music. It was, I didn't dislike it, but it was very jarring when it started playing. Like, oh, okay, I don't know if it was like we're introducing a new planet, so we've got some new music, and it was just kind of like, all right, I'll get that for you. But then I think the scene kind of took over for me for that. But yeah, I know what you mean. It was very different to what we've had all the way through the rest of the, like, up to episode 7 at that point.
It didn't fit in with the
nothing at that level. Yeah,
it didn't
quite well. You expected the almost Miami Vice font to be when they're putting a name us up. Cassian coming out in a white jacket, but instead just took his shirt off just to show us what it looks like to be like that. And I love that he'd taken on the name Keith, and he was just with his lady friend picking out some credits from the top of the shower. Amazing. I love that. That he's just gone back to this sort of roguish, like, I'm escaping, so I'm just going to be this guy again and just use my charm and great. But then you're right, but he has profiled those shore troopers. Awesome to see them again since first time since we've seen us in Rogue One, to turn up to be chasing guys, and then Cassian's just walking, and he's literally like, I'm the shop's just that's the shop I'm going to. I'm just nope. You're running. What are you doing? You're obviously running. You're sweating. Why are you sweating? It's warm. No, you're doing this, and it was just like, oh wow, they're really not. He's going to get caught. But then we've got the amazing KX droids turn up. I did a little bit of one of these when he showed up, because I thought, is it going to be? Is it going to be K2? And it was just hang. It was picking up and. Just like, oh my word! Like, but it was so nice to see it. So it kind of hints at what's coming, and I really like that. And then, for him to go into that cell not the cell, the holding area where they're all getting sentenced. The guy before him, 6 months for walking a dog. He got for and then Cassian gets 6 years for civil disruption, anti-imperial speech, and fleeing the scene of anti-imperial activity, which he had no doing in at all. No. I love when he complains about it. He says, I'm just a tourist. He says, tell the Emperor. It was just like, oh my word.
Or it was like, do you want extra years on your sentence for, holding up judicial hearing? It's like, wow. But that brings full circle from where we were earlier on in the episode with the whole tightening the grip. And obviously all those people there kind of getting harsher sentences for quite innocent crimes. I'm sure in the next episodes when we go into the prison, we're going to hear stories of people who were maybe given small sentences for doing absolutely nothing, given way harsher sentences for that whilst in there, because they were going to be reassessed. So, Yeah,
also, I don't know if either of you spotted it, but I love the fact the actual fan had the Imperial sigil, like, for the grill. It's like, that is a small detail, but hilarious, and I love it. And of course, where she's like, this used to have a lighter sentence. Shame, 6 years, done. Like, wait, what? But yes, it is racial profiling in its kind of essence, and it is very much the stop resisting arrest kind of attitude. It's like, I'm literally walking to the shops. No, you are dangerous. I've been asked to pick up some things. I don't even remember what they were. She just wants this flavor. I don't even want to get them. I was going the other way, but now I have to be here. It's kind of a very much, it's like, I'm a tourist. It's like, well, tough for you. It's very much, you hear about those people who end up going on holiday to Taiwan who get suspected of trafficking drugs and end up with 20 years to death for doing nothing. And it's that level of just, well, no, you look funny and you're running away and you're sweating. It's hot. I'm a tourist. Yeah, well, don't care. You're arrested now. It did feel jarring compared to the rest of the episode. The music, I know what you mean. I think it's fresh, but I know what you mean. It's not timeless. So compared to the end of episode 2, where you have the percussion.
I'm so old.
You are indeed, Dave. You are indeed. I'm not that far behind you. No, I thought it was fantastically done. I like the percussion at the end of the second episode was different. It's big band. It's not overly done. Not the techno for the Dark Troopers, as you're saying. Again, I've liked the different influences, but George Lucas said it best, which I didn't want something that could be lost. I wanted a space opera. And it's the same thing. I don't know if either of you have ever watched the classic amazing cult TV show that is Red Dwarf. Well, when they originally sat down and did that, Doug Nail was like, I don't want some cheesy 80s music here. I want a classical, proper, big opening, similar to what Star Wars had. And it helps keep the show timeless. And this helps keep Star Wars timeless. So I know what you mean. I like different aspects coming into it. I like what Ludwig Göransson brought to the Mando verse as it is. But this is different in a different way. But it was a very anticlimactic end to an episode. And it's kind of this episode had a lot of good, but a lot of kind of But it's like pizza at this point. Even the is still pretty damn good.
Exactly. And I guess we were getting into our final thoughts in the episode now. So for me personally, at least, I really enjoyed this episode. I think this is actually one of the best episodes of the series so far. I know a lot of people will be turned off by the fact that it is possibly considered a filler episode. It's not part of the 3 story arcs that we've been kind of used to so far from the series. But for me, this is fantastic. This is top tier writing. This is top tier acting. And this is good content. Very good content for Star Wars. It closes off some of the kind of knots from the previous episodes and also opens up a few new doors for us to journey into when we move forwards. And I like where all the characters are at the moment, and I can't wait to see where they go from here.
I'm very similar. I mean, I've only watched this the once, and it was kind of a note-taking exercise as well while doing it, so I knew what I was talking about a little bit sometimes tonight. So I'm going to go watch it again. But for me, even just on that watch, it was right up there. I don't know whether I'd put it past last week's episode, but it's one of these that it's so close between the two episodes. I thought it was excellent. I mean, mentioning things in this episode that we finally got Stormtroopers fully, which I think has been a complaint that people have had. Where's all the Stormtroopers? Here they are. We've got some clone troopers. We had a mouse droid turn up, which was just like, oh, a lovely little trait. So I think the series for me has been getting better week on week. It's just climbing the height, and I just hope now the next arc and then the finale 2 episodes are going to really give us that big build and a huge payoff, so that we're ready for the new second season, which is obviously they already shot, or they're already in the midst of shooting, or they're starting to shoot. I mean, people have said it's not doing the numbers that Disney want, but I've seen nothing but positivity when I've looked up about it. Like, I've seen nobody go on and go, I cannot stand it. I've seen some people say that, but they always do. But yeah, for me, it's been some of the best Star Wars, and I'd put that against a lot of the movies as well. This is right up there for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's fantastic done. For everyone who's loves Rogue One, you're going to love this series. That's all you kind of need to put on it. It's different, and it's Star Wars done. It's, as we've said on this show the last few weeks, it's a BBC British political drama, but it's done so well. And if you appreciate that kind of stuff, along with things like Boardwalk Empire and with a bit of Sopranos mixed in, a bit of bit of fantasy, a bit of sci-fi, a bit of everything, just thrown into the melting pot that is Star Wars. Because Star Wars is not no one thing. It always has been a melting pot of ideas and stories and tropes, and I absolutely love it. And yeah, I would put this right up there. This is one of my favorite bits of Star Wars so far. It's fantastically done.
Brilliant. So we want to hear everyone's thoughts at home. Tell us what you thought about this episode, this being episode 7, which I believe was called the announcement.
Yeah, announcement.
So tell us what you thought about it below, and of course, like, comment, and subscribe. I believe we're coming up on, at this moment of time, recording 2,500 subscribers. If we can get there by the end of the year, that would be phenomenal. A brilliant kind of end to close out the year. So please help us reach that goal. Also, go follow us on various different social media things. So Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy. On Facebook and Letterboxd, just type in Cinema Savvy. I'll find the link in the description. And go to our Redbubble store. Pick up a t-shirt. Pick up, there we go. Pick up that t-shirt in particular. Pick up a cushion or pick up a coffee mug, whatever. There's loads of different things across the store. We're really happy with how that's going on that side and help support the channel. Before we go into what is coming up on our slates, I'm just going to get you guys to preach your social medias. If people want to go out there and find you both, go ahead.
You'll mostly find me here right now. My YouTube channel kind of took a bit of a hiatus, and it's still there. You can have a look if you want to, but I'll be back here probably talking about Star Wars in some way or form. You can also follow me on my Twitter if you do want to do that, over at the Dave Bryan, for some witty banter. I'm sure I'll turn up eventually in the tweet. Someone might even read them.
Indeed, I've got nothing going on social-wise at the moment. TikTok's taken a indefinite hiatus for the moment. His wife has done its merry old dance. But I was going to say, if he didn't say, yeah, go find Dave at the Life of Brian on his YouTube channel, A Different Life of Brian. It's fantastic. Go enjoy that. And yeah, take away in terms of what you guys have got coming up, because the most recent stuff being, especially the big old Bond video and everything else, has been fantastic so far.
Excellent. Thank you ever so much. So we still have our Steven Spielberg retrospective going on. We are getting very close to the end. We're actually all the way up to the BFG. So we are getting dangerously close to modern day Spielberg. We're talking West Side Story being the last one that he did. Fablemans, which is coming out this year, which we will have our top 10 video hopefully coming out about the same time as our Fablemans review. So BFG, that's going to be out on Tuesday, the 25th of October. I'm not actually sure who's on that one. I'm not on that one, but I know for sure George will be on there with some random guest star who will be coming on as well. Join in next week, of course, for another Andor discussion. That will be coming out this same time, 9 o'clock Wednesdays. It should be like clockwork. You guys should be setting an alarm for this at this stage. We're 7 episodes through, so that should be on there. And also, I don't have a banner for it, but we've just done our London Film Festival. We've completed it. It is done. We do have one more review that is coming out, which is Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. We're going to be putting out a spoiler-free review, hopefully within the week. Need to try and schedule that in somewhere, so watch our socials for that one. And then a spoiler-filled one will be coming out at some point in November once George has seen the film. So I just want to say thank you ever so much for everyone for watching. We will see you next week on the next episode, and have a good evening. Goodbye.